Today, we are focused on making higher quality, better composed shots. We're going to kind of focus a little bit on like the VFX industry today and kind of establishing shots and kind of building out some really interesting workflows and use cases for doing that and how you might approach creating something that's a little bit grander in scale with a lot of the fine-tuned details that you would need. So we'll go through the process of how to compose things, we'll go through the process of like editing and tweaking parts and pieces of that. We'll probably upscale it at some point and kind of drive that through. And so we'll have some fun figuring out how to recreate a few establishing shots, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll get started and we'll maybe do something that's kind of around this, maybe 4-3. I anticipate that if we prompt for this, we're not going to get exactly what I'm thinking. We're going to play around with this. We're going to see how we can get a little bit more manipulative control, how we can guide the generation without having to do like a full sketch or a full storyboard. How can we kind of like still provide enough guidance to get what we want? So it's kind of like inspired by some like Lord of the Rings type stuff, you know, but general composition is kind of the thing I'm more concerned about right now. A lot of the problem that you'll have if you're relying on the AI to do the composition for you is that you've got just kind of like this person sitting right in the middle, looking at this really big thing that's also right in the middle, and that's not really good from a composition perspective. So we're going to figure out how to get a little bit more control over that, and then we'll go in and edit it a little more. So out of control layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out my trusty brush and actually draw a little bit over here. We're going to just kind of like ideate here. So I'm doing a very loose sketch. I'm just trying to get like some general structure in. I'm going to even go through and generate this just so that we see that it's probably not going to be enough. Not exactly what I was thinking from the perspective. I'm also wondering if I want to like change this just a little bit from a composition perspective. I think I do. So I'm going to duplicate it on this top one. And kind of move this around a little bit. I'm just kind of recomposing my little sketches here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my regional guidance because I don't think it really picked up what I wanted. So we'll do mountain, and I'm going to brush where I want the mountain to go. We'll do some forest trees. We'll do a river. And then we will do our Elven City, white marble, pristine. Fantasy Elven City made of white marble. We'll give that a shot. I may even downweight the mountain here and see if that kind of gets rid of this like everything is stone type look. This could be the white marble that's causing this. So let's just do built into a mountainside because I think white marble might be like expanding and kind of taking over that image. This is kind of more what I think I envisioned, right? Which is like the river going off into the distance. We've got a big elven city. And we can, you know, hide our regional guidance at this point for the sake of just completeness. Woman. At this point, I'm probably going to take away my control image. And the main reason for that is this kind of already services my needs for the most part. Like I'm not looking for it to look more like my sketch than this. So I'm just going to get rid of that control layer. What I could do if I liked this and I want to kind of use it as a reference point, I can copy this new image as a control layer. Probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a tile control net and just kind of keep that low so that it serves as a little bit of just like a guardrails on this is generally the color and the vibe I'm going for. Don't go too far outside of these boundaries. And then we'll go in and start like editing some of the image. So I might come down here and I might tweak this woman down here and we'll do, I can get away with a higher denoising strength because we have kind of like a tile control net there. Okay, so we've got that. If I wanted to, for example, blur everything except this lady down here, what I might do is like, and again, you can kind of like merge this together, right? So you could selectively choose where you wanted to blur. I'm going to hide my regional guidance. I'm going to merge this as like an overlay layer. I'll filter and we'll do blur image and maybe turn that up to like 18 or so. That'll just like blur the entire thing and it might be too much, but we can kind of use that if we want to. And then, we've got that blur, could do that at full opacity. We can bring that lower if we want to kind of have like a dreamy effect. But then we can kind of erase the pieces that we want to focus the sharpness of. So we've kind of added this like blurry thing. I can now copy that raster layer to an in-paint mask and just tweak that blurred part over here, get our entire bounding box. And so now we'll just kind of like AI blur. Obviously, like there's some elements that we'd want to like go in and continue to tweak, but we've added a lot of depth now to this image by doing that type of like blur effect, right? And now there's a little bit more of this that we can kind of play with. Some of this I probably want to tweak a little bit. So, I'll take that out and we'll maybe erase some of this. So we'll do like one last little in paint here on these edges. And then we will start getting in and kind of working on this like chunky white marble Elven Fortress. Now we want to come in and edit this image. Now we're just going to come in and actually edit this Elven city. And so I'll hide my regional guidance because, we know what's there now. It's kind of just, that's like the base prompt that we're using. What I'm going to call out is that I've got this tile control net, right? So the tile control net we can see is providing this kind of like general structural control based on what we had previously generated, right? I may want to update this with the latest like blur that we have. So to do that, I'm going to bring the bounding box back to my original, and I am going to hit the pull bounding box into layer. And what that's going to do is it's just going to update everything that is in my raster layers, and it's going to turn that into the tile control. So this is just a way of like updating it to the latest version that we've got. I'm going to hide it because I don't want to see it right now. And the thing that I'm going to call out is that this is a relatively low tile. Because it's low, what it's going to do is it's basically like, the way that I think about it is almost like it's blurring its eyes looking at the image while it's creating it. It's like, okay, there's going to be a white thing here. It's going to be roughly shaped like this. It's going to be more like what we have, but it's so low that it will allow it to just kind of like figure out how it wants to incorporate that color into the generation. And so you can see what it did is it went in and it turned our original kind of like blobby thing into something that looks a lot nicer, right? We get more of that like elven look and feel. That is really what we're using that tile control for, is kind of like stay in this general shape and structure, but like go wild with the details. And that's kind of what we're using that technique to do. Again, once we have decided that we like really appreciate a certain aesthetic, what we might want to do again is just update our control layer. It's pushing it back towards that old image that we had. It's kind of like the ghost of our original image. And so we're just going to update that again by hitting pull bounding box into layer. And then we'll go in and we'll do maybe a couple more detailed in paints. It looks pretty nice. I mean, we can kind of come in and tweak and poke and prod, but you get the idea. We're like going in and tweaking and editing and using control layers to inject stuff, all of that towards getting us, closer to what we want in this image. So let's say that we're happy with this largely. And I think for the most part, we've gotten there. We've got a nice like blur effect. We've got some cool things going on. I'm going to save this out to our gallery. So now we've got this beautiful image, and we're going to send this to our upscale. So we'll send to upscale. We'll use our default upscaler there. I'm going to take the creativity up a little bit and the structure down a little bit. So this tile control net, we used it in one region and we did kind of like in painting. When you're upscaling, it is effectively doing that across the entire image. So it's basically saying, I'm going to in paint this tile, I'm going to in paint this tile, I'm going to in paint this tile. It's doing that all together in one big upscale. And it's using tile to make sure that the image is close to what you put in the beginning. So it's kind of like using the tile to keep things on our kind of like general structural color target of our original image. That is what the upscaling system is doing. When we do this, this prompt is used across the entire image. So you typically are not going to want to put very specific things for one part of the image into the prompt, because otherwise it's going to kind of hallucinate it everywhere. And what you'll find is that the larger you're going on that image, if you've got those types of words in it, like subject matter, you might see that kind of pop up in a couple of places if you have the creativity scale high. What creativity is doing is it's kind of the same as denoising strength. The higher end of this is doing higher denoising, and structure is controlling that tile control net. Higher structure is more of a tile effect. Lower structure is kind of loosening the effect of that tile control net. You might want to loosen up the tile if you want more details. You might want to increase creativity a bit to add more of that juice. So that's kind of how it works. And so it's running through that process and kind of going through the upscaler, but you can see the tiles as it's doing that, right? So we have each of these tiles, and each of those is getting in painted with the tile control net and stitched together in this bigger, larger composite. You'll notice that there are a little bit of overlap. We're kind of like blending each tile together for like a seamless effect. And we're kind of composing that overall into the resulting image. KDPM2 as a scheduler typically finds that you'll have better details. It's kind of a little bit more of like a grainier scheduler. And so when you're using it for upscaling, what you'll find is that it can kind of like give it a little bit more of that realistic flavor to it. Let's go back to our upscaler here and we can kind of see we got a little bit too creative. I can see a couple of places where we got too creative. And so we could take out establishing shot, fantasy, film, and then, just all the style stuff. We can kind of keep the creativity high. We can bring the structure up a little bit so that it's not losing its mind. And we can run that same upscaler again. But that's going to kind of give us the kind of a little bit more on the rails generation where it's not hallucinating those tiny pieces in. And if we look at the image, there's probably still some areas where we're going to want to do some in painting, and we'd want to come in. Now that it's bigger, we can actually do some more detailed in painting, and we can kind of come in and get those lines all clean. But you can see where it's really created a lot more detail than was in the original image. This part's kind of cool that it like hallucinated this elven city in the far off distance, because that adds some depth to this that probably wasn't there in the original. We could take parts of this and pull this into a composite. So, this one's upscaling right now. This is our second pass. We can see that we're leaving that creativity where it was, but increasing the structure actually brought a lot more depth in. The structure, though, we'll note this, by increasing the structure, our blurred image is also blurred here. We drove structure and said, like, scale this, but blur it. And because it was kind of imposing that blur, we ended up getting a lot of blur over here. So we actually do want to probably composite this. Let's just show what that would look like and how we would stitch it together and maybe do a little bit of in painting. And so I'm going to take the smaller variant here as our raster layer, and then I am going to fit our bounding box to it. And I will bring our larger upscaled image in, and I will just transform that to fit our bounding box. So we've got the clean one down here, but this one's got some nasty blur. We've got the nice clean elven city that's got a lot of nice detail, but has some like hallucinations down the bottom. So I'm just going to erase the bottom part from this. And luckily there's some nice spots that we can do that to keep it clean. And this is looking a lot better, right? And then we can kind of come in and paint this for the sake of having a nice like final image. We'll do some in painting here just on the edges to kind of blur this together. And we'll keep that relatively low. We'll leave it as is. I think we get the picture and it looks pretty cool. All right, we'll save that out. We'll call that a day for today. Appreciate everyone, as always, having fun with me, but we'll see you all next week. Have a good one. Bye.